Always trust.
We ask the questions.
What is needed in the world?
Bio je studentski aktivista i jedan od glavnih organizatora demonstracija 97. i 98. godine u Prištini. Nekoliko puta je hapšen i osuđivan zbog političkog djelovanja na Kosovu. Od 2021. obnovio je mandat premijera Kosova i, kako kažu, težak je pregovarač sa međunarodnim predstavnicima i Beogradom o normalizaciji odnosa sa Srbijom. U razgovoru za Jazeeru kaže da neće odustati od preregistracije tablica na sjeveru Kosova nakon 1. septembra i uvođenja recipročnih mjera koje se tiču ličnih dokumenata za građane Srbije. Za Jazeeru govori Albin Kurti. Gospodine Kurti, dobrodošli u program Jazeere.
Thank you for having me and welcome to Pristina.
Ja moram reći da smo mi, kada smo dogovarali ovaj intervju, dogovarali da on bude na nekom bosanskom BHS jezicima, međutim, vi ste se predomislili, insistirate, tako da ćemo kombinovati. Ja ću govoriti na ovim bosansko-hrvatsko-srpskom, a vi na engleskom, pa ćemo tako nastaviti dalje. Ovih dana vodi se živa diplomatska aktivnost međunarodnih visokih predstavnika Amerike i Evropske unije. Gospodin Lajčak i Eskobar su jučer razgovarali ovdje sa vama, danas su na sjeveru Kosova. Jesu li imali neke nove prijedloge i šta se može očekivati 1. septembra kada su u pitanju uvođenje recipročnih mjera po preregistracije vozila i dokumenta?
We have had two decisions on 29th of June this year about reciprocity measures with Serbia regarding entry-exit documents at the border crossings, but at the same time regarding car plates. We are creating a 2-month window of opportunity so all the Serbs can convert car plates into legal, legitimate RKS. So after 1st of November, there will be no illegal car plates anymore. These are sovereign decisions of our government, and we will pursue with our plan. Meanwhile, we have been very positive and constructive in talks in Brussels, but first of all, focusing on general framework of the agreement for normalization of relations. And then among current issues, we also discussed about these tensions which have been raised recently, but I think that everything will be resolved. So on the 1st of September we will have no barricades in the north as we have had on 31st of July.
Kako znate?
Well, we are doing all our best with our diplomatic engagement, but at the same time I think that Serbian side understood that barricades which block freedom of movement have no international support whatsoever, but also no support of Serbs. They had to bring illegal structures in Raška and in Belgrade in 2 separate meetings in order to build those barricades in Kosovo and to try to sabotage the rule of law and constitutionality of our country. I think that they've also learned a lesson, and we are not going to create a dual legal system within our country. Neither we did not postpone for a month in order to postpone it further.
Pa kako teče taj proces zamjene ličnih dokumenata na sjeveru Kosova?
They don't have to change their documents. They can have whatever documents they want. Vast majority of Serbs in Kosovo, they have ID cards of Kosovo. In Kosovo, there are around 130,000 Serbs altogether, like 6% of population. Only 2,000 to 5,000 Serbs keep insisting on Serbian ID, and they refuse to get ID cards of Kosovo. When they enter the border crossing from Serbia to Kosovo, if they choose to identify themselves as Serbs of Serbia, they will get this entry-exit document. Otherwise, if they choose to show ID card of Kosovo, if they have one, and vast majority do have, then of course they don't need entry-exit document. So all this fuzz is about for 2,000 to 5,000 Serbs. Vast majority have ID cards of Kosovo. It's for some extremists who I'm being pressured to accommodate by either extending further deadline for implementation or by creating a dual legal system within Kosovo, and neither of these are acceptable for me.
Da li je tačno da je gospodin Lajčak tražio 3 mjeseca još odgode za primjenu ovih mjera?
I haven't heard exactly 3 months, but there was always this idea to postpone further because what might happen? Well, you know, there are criminal gangs. During my mandate, I have destroyed 63 criminal gangs. These are not ordinary Serbs. These barricades did not spring from the ground. They were landing from above because meetings in Raška and in Belgrade brought these barricades. And in these barricades, there were armed people and in combat readiness attitude for whatever vehicles will come from the other side. So, you know, you cannot block the roads like that anymore.
A šta ćete, gospodine Kurti, ako se to ponovi 1. novembra ili 1. septembra ili 1. oktobra? Kako će Kosovo odgovoriti ili ćete ova bezbednosna pitanja ostaviti KFOR-u koji je značajno pojačao snage u tom dijelu Kosova?
KFOR is in Kosovo. That means NATO is in Kosovo, even though NATO is not an organization where we have membership. They do have membership in our state. And we are in close cooperation. I met yesterday with General Commander Kajari and also with our police and with EULEX. But barricades are not a solution to any problem. They are the very problem for rule of law, for peace and security. And there is general consensus in Kosovo and with our international partners that such barricades should not be erected again and will not be tolerated. You know, 13 barricades were erected on 31st of July, 9 of them within 10 minutes, fully organized by illegal structures. It's not ordinary citizens. It is people who are in the payroll of Belgrade. So it is not for the sake of the needs and the rights of the Serbs. It's because of the appetites and ambitions of Belgrade, who is continuing to play a role of regional hegemony in the Balkans, trying to dominate others. But we are a democratic sovereign state.
Vi ste nedavno izjavili da ne treba isključiti mogućnost novih konflikta. Jel vi očekujete nešto tako da će se desiti? Hoćete li slati specijalne jedinice na sjever Kosova?
There is a state mechanism which will act, and that is not only police, but it is especially police, and it is especially special police. Nobody can stop special police of Kosovo from going to the north. North of Kosovo is part of Kosovo, is in Kosovo. And there has never been more rule of law in the north than now. It is true that there has been 14 attacks last year and this year, 10 of them on our police who was fighting smugglers and organized crime. But again, rule of law is something that we do not compromise.
Da li vi imate informacije, da li razgovarate sa Srbima sa sjevera bez posrednika iz Beograda? Kako ljudi doživljavaju specijalnu policiju na sjeveru Kosova? Da li se boje?
I think that the criminals are those who are afraid.
Ja pitam za obične ljude.
Well, I think that the criminals are afraid, and that is good. Criminals should be afraid, and we should not be afraid when criminals are afraid. So, for me, it is a very clear situation. We are not after ordinary citizens. Our police, our intelligence, is not acting according to national identity of people, but according to their behavior and actions, be those individual or group.
Niste mi odgovorili, razgovarate li sa Srbima, sa običnim ljudima, o njihovim brigama, o njihovim strahovima, o njihovim potrebama?
Of course I do talk with them, with many of them, and there are Serbs who complain about illegal structures of Serbia, but 2,679 entry-exit documents that I was issuing at the border crossings, 0 incidents and 0 complaints. No Serbs complained that they had to take this exit-entry document. That's why Belgrade was in panic and did on 31st of July what they have done. You know, the meeting that took place on the 18th of August in Brussels was supposed to take place on 19th of July, but it was postponed upon the request of Belgrade, which I respected. To be honest, now I suspect why they postponed this meeting for a month. Why it did not happen on the 19th of July? Perhaps because they were planning something for 31st of July, just as it has happened and we all witnessed it.
Dio briselskog sporazuma koji evo godinama nije ispregovaran je i zajednica srpskih opština. Dakle, potpisan je 2013. pa je 2015. dorađen. Nakon toga je Ustavni sud Kosova rekao da pojedine odredbe tog sporazuma, odnosno tog dijela sporazuma, nisu u skladu sa Ustavom Kosova. Možete li vi na neki drugi način osigurati sve ono što bi bile nadležnosti zajednice srpskih opština, srpskoj nacionalnoj grupi na sjeveru, ali i u ovih ostalih 6 opština južno od Ibra, neki evropski model? Postoje takvi modeli? Jeste li nudili tako nešto?
It is very interesting that no Serbs of Kosovo wrote a letter to me asking for association of Serb majority municipalities. It's only Belgrade asking for it.
Ali to je dio briselskog sporazuma. Mislim, sad ne možemo razgovarati ima li ih ili nema. Međunarodni je sporazum.
We have to see who initiated it, with what kind of motivation, and to what ends. So, in Bosnia and Herzegovina, in April 1991, 14 Serb majority municipalities got together and they created their association. Then, on 9th of January 1992, they declared independence. On 28th of February 1992, they adopted their constitution. On 14th of December 1995, in Dayton, Ohio, they got international recognition as Republika Srpska.
You are good with numbers.
Well, I'm good with memory.
Yes.
And I'm good with memory because that's a painful memory. And here you have Republika Srpska today, which is a kind of a Kaliningrad in the Balkans.
Svima je jasno da vi ne želite Republiku Srpsku na Kosovu.
Well, this is what the tendency is. They say fake state of Kosovo, but nonetheless, in this fake state of Kosovo, we want this association, community of Serb majority municipalities, number one. Number two, no Serbs is asking from me that thing. They just want jobs, justice, education, healthcare. And on the top of everything, our constitutional court said that none of the 7 chapters of this association is in compliance with our constitution. Generally, 23 articles of our constitution has been violated. You cannot have a one ethnic association in Kosovo. You can have association of municipalities with development in mind, but not with ethnic identity in mind.
Je li to gospodin Tači znao kada je tako nešto potpisao? To je međunarodni sporazum.
He has been under pressure at that time, and he surrendered to that pressure. And I think that that pressure had a couple of reasons or a couple of driving forces behind, if I may say so. One was this special court, where he's in prison now. And second is that his government was characterized with scandals of corruption. So he ultimately surrendered to the pressure. If somebody would have told, on the top of everything, if somebody would have told then Prime Minister Takođe that you are going to sign this agreement, but even 11 years after, Serbia is not going to recognize Kosovo, he might have gotten second thoughts. But at that time, when they started dialogue and they've done this agreement, they thought that Serbia will recognize us in a year or two. And here we are now, 2022, they still say that they will never recognize Kosovo.
To je ipak međunarodni sporazum koji je ratifikovan u parlamentu Kosova.
But it is interesting, not in Serbia. Serbia did not ratify it.
Što sad mislite, da nije važeći zato što ga...
No, I'm just saying that Serbia did not ratify it. It's very interesting.
Da li ste im dobri ideji, možda će sad?
No, I give ideas to everyone, but they don't listen.
Dobro, postoji li neki evropski model koji biste vi ponudili kao zamjenu za zajednicu srpskih opština, što bi Srbima bilo prihvatljivo? Jeste li razmišljali o tome?
Well, it is not the necessity of Serbs. It is the requirement, appetite of Belgrade. Why should I care about appetites of Belgrade to accommodate? You know, you perhaps know that Kosovo is the society of victims. We had genocide here. Why would now we still think about how to please Belgrade, which did not deal with the past, did not do any grain of introspection about what has happened here? 950 Albanians have been exhumed from 5 different mass graves in Serbia. 744 in Batajnica, which is a police shooting range at the suburb of Belgrade. So they never address the past. There is no such thing as transitional justice in Serbia. So now at the top of everything, they want a state within a state, and they don't hide it. It's not about rights of the Serbs. They never bother to say why Ahtisaari's plan is not enough. Because Ahtisaari's plan, Chapter 3 of our Constitution, articles from 57 to 62, give enormous right to Serb minority and to minorities in general. Belgrade never bothered to say why this is not enough. We want association. Because they have a good experience from Bosnia. But that is a nightmare for Bosniaks, for Croats, for Serbs themselves, and for the entire region.
Sad kad ste spomenuli manjine, postoji u posljednje vrijeme neka inicijativa koja još uvijek nije zvanična, a to je formiranje ovih bošnjačkih opština u okolini Prizrena, Župa, Gora, Vitomirica. Da li vam je prihvatljiva ta ideja? U tim područjima žive Bošnjaci i Srbi, Bošnjaci i Romi, Bošnjaci i Goranci. Može li doći do tako nečega?
I run in elections last year, not with the promise of new municipalities. I believe that current municipalities need factories for people to work. They need jobs. They don't need a new municipal building to become an official in an office. They need jobs. They need better schools and hospitals. And I'm not keen into ethnically based municipalities.
Vi niste za to?
I'm not in favor of that. I know that that is the requirement of some of the representatives, but I think that it is important to bring investors in these municipalities rather than chop and separate.
Jesu oni došli sa tim idejama već do vas?
There were some ideas about that, but I think that as long as people believe that the only place where they can find a new job is somewhere in state institutions, be they local or central, they are going to seek for their municipality. And then every village wants to become a municipality. But I think it's not doable. You know, we should work in private sector, not only in public sector, which has become a dream place of work.
Dobro, dakle nećete podržati ove inicijative?
Well, I think they are not right, and I told them 1 year and a half before. You know, and also there are some Albanians in different villages who several villages get together and they say, we want our municipality. It's not okay, you know, you want, but you know, you have to think about the whole, and why do you want it? Because they think that somebody can become mayor of, it's political ambitions of certain individuals and people who have limited imagination about how development should take place. They just believe that they should fill offices of bureaucratic order rather than bring investors so people can work in factories and in this way grow the economy and get well-being for themselves.
Odnosi Kosova i Bosne i Hercegovine opterećeni su nepriznavanjem Kosova, uvedeni su međusobni vizni režimi, što građanima uveliko otežava i komunikaciju međusobno i putovanje, naročito Bošnjacima koji su rodbinskim vezama vezani, dakle, za Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Jeste li vi nekada pokrenuli ovu inicijativu među političarima Bosne i Hercegovine? Jeste li imali neke kontakte da se, ako ništa, ovaj bezvizni režim riješi? Jer, jeli, nonsens je da se iz Srbije sa ličnom kartom ulazi na Kosovo i obratno, a iz Bosne i Hercegovine i u Bosnu i Hercegovinu građanima Kosova, odnosno Bosne i Hercegovine, trebaju vize?
I never put Bosnia and Herzegovina in the same category with Serbia, and even in the past when some of my predecessors did decisions when they said both Serbia and Bosnia and Herzegovina do not recognize Kosovo, I never agreed with that. Because there was genocide in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and you have a creature of that genocide, which is Republika Srpska. And I think that we should be very firm and clear on that. The problem of relations between Pristina and Sarajevo is the problem that Sarajevo has internally, and that is Republika Srpska. If Republika Srpska wouldn't be against, Bosnia and Herzegovina would recognize Kosovo. I think it's just the veto power of Republika Srpska which does not allow Bosnia and Herzegovina to recognize Kosovo. Our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Diaspora is doing its best for good relations between our two countries. But they deal also with these technicalities. I would love to have free travel between Pristina and Sarajevo, but again, the main obstacle there
Jeste li probali razgovarati
is Republika Srpska.
ukoliko bi, dakle, ovo pitanje priznanja ostalo sa strane kao što sada stoji sa nekim drugim zemljama, ali da se, kako bih rekla, običnim građanima olakša život kada je u pitanju?
I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of those talks where we could see what we can do so we increase cooperation and we ease freedom of movement.
Pitaću vas još, Ustavni sud 2016. donio je odluku da se zemljište oko manastira Dečani upiše u vlasništvo. Lokalne vlasti to još uvijek nisu provele. Govorite o vladavini prava. Ustavni sud je insistirao, dakle, da se ta odluka mora izvršiti, međunarodna zajednica također. Kakav je vaš komentar?
Well, there are 24 hectares which in the 90s regime of Slobodan Milošević gave to the monastery. And there has been a lot of procedural violations. And finally, I think that wrongfully, Constitutional Court considered this issue admissible and decided as they've done. What is for me very surprising is that the authorities of Monastery of Dečan, they refused to meet with me. So I'm the first Prime Minister of Kosovo with whom the authorities of Monastery of Dečan are not meeting with. And you know, I was expecting from the priests and church to be more into, let's say, the register of theology, spiritualism, benevolence, tolerance, and metaphysics, and not so much into property. For me, it was quite surprising how much church and monasteries are preoccupied with property. You know, land, property is something that business community is very interested for. Citizens are. Economic development depends on that. But equally, perhaps even more, we have interest, horizontal interest, of monasteries and churches for land, for property, for territory.
Ovo je odluka Ustavnog suda, pa vas pitam, dakle, u smislu vladavine prava, kao što je odluka Ustavnog suda da zajednica srpskih opština nije u skladu sa pojedinim odredbama Ustava, Ustavni sud je odredio, dakle, naložio da se izvrši njihova odluka. Pitam vas, vladavina prava je jedan od pretpostavki i mora biti ispunjen kao uslov za priključenje Evropskoj uniji. U tom smislu.
We want to join European Union, we want to join Council of Europe, but at the same time, I want to start a dialogue with Monastery of Dečan, because it is not fair to try to enjoy a gift from Milošević and at the same time recall and insist on a decision of Constitutional Court of a country that you don't recognize. So there is a big paradox here, but I want to start a dialogue and to discuss with them, bearing in mind that I, as Prime Minister in executive branch, I'm not someone who does the court.
Ne možete sa monasima diskutovati o odluci Ustavnog suda. U tom smislu vas pitam. Ukoliko ste horizontalno za vladavinu prava, njihove odluke moraju biti provedene.
I was not in 2016 prime minister. Why they didn't solve it with my predecessors and they kept meeting with them? There is something else at issue.
Dobro, Ustavni sud je Ustavni sud. Mislim, ne može biti mijenjan zato što su različiti premijeri.
I became prime minister last year. 5 years they had to solve this issue. And they met with all of those who did not solve this issue. So I think that this is not as simple as they are presenting it.
Dobro, jeste li vi principijelno za vladavinu prava i provođenje odluka Ustavnog suda?
Yes.
Bez obzira o kome se radi.
But I'm neither prosecutor nor judge. I'm just saying that I followed the process.
Naravno.
I just followed the process. And the issue of cultural heritage on one hand and the issue of property on the other are not one and the same.
Da li biste Srbima na Kosovu dali sve ono što su Albanci imali prema Ustavu bivše države iz 1974. godine, samo kratko?
We need the reciprocity of minority rights between Kosovo and Serbia because reciprocity is the healthy principle of good neighborly relations. And Kosovo is not Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia was created and destroyed by Serbia for the same goal, for Greater Serbia. At the beginning of 20th century, it was created so Serbia enlarges. At the end of 20th century, it was destroyed so Serbia enlarges. So we cannot compare these two things.
Da li ne?
Well, you know, I'm again emphasizing, no Serbs of Kosovo are asking for autonomy within Kosovo. They want jobs and justice. Don't prescribe what Belgrade traditionally wanted and wants to ordinary citizens. We achieved liberation and declared independence from Serbia. Serbia has to recognize this.
Gospodine Kurti, hvala vam za ovaj razgovor.
Thank you.